Give folks a moment to sign in. All right, welcome everyone to preview week for Willamette, the Pinot Noir auction. The wines featured in this tasting series are small lot bottlings for our exclusive trade auction. You can contact Emily at the WVWA and I'll drop her email address in the chat if you don't know about the auction and you'd like to learn more. For this year's auction, we're pleased to announce a charitable partnership with the James Beard Foundation's Food and Beverage Investment Fund for Black and Indigenous Americans as part of their Open for Good campaign. All funds raised on auction lots beyond the opening bids, as well as through the paddle raise pledge, will go to the investment fund, and I'll drop their website in the chat as well. I want to take a minute also to thank our auction sponsors for their ongoing support. And now I'd like to turn it over to our featured panelists today. Representing Lot 52, John Tomaselli of Torii. Representing
Hello.
Lot 53, Russell Gladhart of Winters Hill Estate.
Hi, everyone.
Representing Lot 55, Michael Hammond of Benton-Lane.
Hi, everybody.
Representing Lot 56, Shannon Gustafson of Raptor Ridge Winery.
Hi, everyone.
And now I'll kick it off to our host, Alison Sokol Blosser with Sokol Blosser Winery. Alison, they're all yours.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Julia. Well, I am really excited to be here presenting these four amazing winemakers and their wines. So, you know, this is a new format for us. And I think it is really fitting because 2020 is obviously the year of a lot of firsts for everybody. Like, this is the first time I'm working from home a lot. So unfortunately, this background behind me is not live and not real, covering up the mess behind me. You know, it's also like the first time I've had to do kindergarten circle time on Zoom. I don't know if anybody else has had that as a first this year. It's kind of painful. And so, of course, this is also the first time that we're doing our Willamette Pinot auction online. And so this means that we get to do these really cool online seminars, and we're bringing the Willamette Valley to you. So we love visitors. We love having you all come to visit us in the Willamette Valley. We miss the fact that we can't do that right now. And so this is the next best thing, to try to replace being with you in person, sharing our stories and sharing our wines. And it's also a little bit different for us. All these winemakers are used to being able to present and see you directly and pour wine into your glass, and we don't get to do that. So we can see each other, we can't see you, and we still want to hear from you. So would love to know, you can post in the chat, where are you all from? Where are you tuning in from? And assuming that it's 5 o'clock somewhere, especially if you're on the East Coast right now, what's in your glass? What are you drinking? We'll find out soon what's in the glasses of all of the winemakers, but would also love to know what you are enjoying right now. So we're going to start with some quick introductions of these amazing winemakers and their wineries, and then we're going to talk about the auction lots and the 2018 vintage, which don't want to steal their thunder, but was a pretty outstanding vintage. And then we're going to talk about the influence of soils and winemaker, the influence of the winemaker in the ultimate product of the end result of the wine. And then we'll open it up for Q&A. So please use the Q&A function, ask questions along the way. We really want to make this engaging and fun and memorable for everybody. So with that, let's get started. And John, why don't you kick us off?
Okay. My name is John Tomaselli. I'm the associate winemaker at Torii. I've been here working with Jacques Tardy making the wines for 14 years now. So my hands are in it every day, and he and I have great synergy working together. Torii Winery was founded in 1993. That was our first vintage. Back then we only did 1,000 cases. Now we're up to about 10,000. Our focus here is making wines that have a great expression of the earth and terroir. That's kind of where the name comes from. Torii means gate in Japanese, more Scandinavian for earth. It's kind of a hybrid name, but it really it kind of shows our respect for the earth, balanced wines. Sustainability in winemaking is a big part of what we do. You know, Pinot Noir is most of our production. I also do some Pinot Gris, Chardonnay, some lovely offerings made in mostly in an old world traditional style. Most of that comes from Jock's background, 8th generation Burgundian winemaker, which I think really shows in our style. Yeah, and like I said, I've been here for 14 years. I love making the wine. We're lucky enough to work with some fantastic material growers. Yeah, so that's kind of us in a nutshell.
Fantastic. Thanks, John. Russell, talk to us about Winters Hill.
Sure. So, hello, everyone. Winters Hill is it's a family winery, and our name Winter comes from my mother's parents, John and Lena Winter, who bought this property here in the Dundee Hills. And my parents planted our vines actually 30 years ago. We're celebrating that anniversary this year. We are 100% estate grown, so everything comes from our own vineyards right here in the Dundee Hills. You know, for me, I've now been partners with my parents for 15 years, working together with them. And I really have to say that, you know, the thing I really enjoy working as a family, because it's allowed me to really get to know my parents and my family in a whole nother, a different way than you get to know them as parents. They're now also my business partners, and you get to know them kind of professionally, and you get to rely on them. You know, but they're still family. So it's this wonderful kind of combination. And, you know, last week I got the forklift stuck in the gravel, and I called my dad, and he hooked up the tractor. He's, you know, 80 years old this year, but we got out a chain and hooked it up to the forklift, and he pulled me out. And, you know, as a great father, which I hope to emulate, he did not say, "You dummy, why'd you get stuck in the gravel like that?" He just helped me get out, and we got on with our work. And so that's one of the things I really like about working in this business and working with my family, is that chance to kind of get to know them. And, you know, as the years go by, I find, you know, it gets deeper and deeper and tighter. So I'll talk more about the wine in particular later, but just want to leave you with that idea of kind of the estate family winery here in the Dundee Hills.
Hats off to you, Russell. Being in a family business is not easy. It is not for the faint of heart. So that is fantastic. Michael?
Sure. Hi, my name is Michael Hammond. I'm from Benton-Lane Winery. Benton-Lane was established by Steve and Carol Gerard from Gerard Wines in California. They found that they really loved Pinot Noir. They really loved Oregon. And so in 86, they decided they were going to seek out a good piece of property up here in Oregon. What he found after years of research was this sheep farm, originally a sheep farm, was for sale. And so he picked this up along with a good amount of additional acreage that he has since portioned off, but kept the best portion for himself. We're 143 planted acres. We have both Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. The Chardonnay is a fairly new addition. We started planting it in about 2013, so we're just starting to increase our case production on that one. But for Pinots, you know, we can do up to 20,000 cases a year. We're not currently doing that. We're a little bit less than that, but I think that's probably a good thing. Yeah, it's just a really cool site. We are backed up to kind of a rain shadow, and so we don't get hit with some of the really bad weather that tends to just kind of get broken up and going north and south. We're about an hour and a half south of McMinnville, so a little bit more southern of the Willamette Valley, I guess. Yeah, I mean, we try to use, we're not considered biodynamic or organic, but we try to use all the best parts of that we can. We try to do as few sprays as possible, but when it does come to a point when we need to use something, we can, which is nice. Works well for our site. Yeah, I mean, that's about it.
Fantastic. And you're celebrating a pretty big anniversary, I understand, as well.
Yes, so he started planting in '88, and the first year they actually made wine was '90. So yeah.
Very cool. Well, congratulations. Shannon, why don't you talk to us a little bit about Raptor Ridge? And you're on mute, so you'll need to take your mute off.
There we go. So I'm Shannon Gustafson. I'm the winemaker at Raptor Ridge. We originally started in 1995. It was founded by Scott and Annie Scholl, who are both very active in the wine industry still, and you can often find Scott out on Raptor and Annie up in our tasting room. We're located here in the Chehalem Mountains, about 17 miles from Portland. In addition to working with our estate Pinot Noir here in the Chehalem Mountains, which is actually the new Laurelwood district, we also source fruit from 4 other AVAs here in the Willamette Valley. So we have long-standing relationships with a lot of these growers. And we also make a sparkling Brut Rosé, Oak Syrah, Gruner Veltliner, Pinot Gris, and Chardonnay. A lot of people ask us where the name Raptor Ridge came from, and it was a pretty good rumor, but no, we did not find velociraptor bones in soil pits. It actually has to do with the many raptors that we find in our vineyards that help us with rodent management. I joined on here at Raptor Ridge in 2017, and Scott and I both have a combined, I was counting, I think 44 harvests, commercial harvests between the two of us going into the 2020 vintage.
Wow, that is impressive. Awesome. Well, it's great to get to know all of you and or get to know you all better, but want to also understand, talk about your auction lots and share, your inspiration and how you came up with the name and how you made the wine. So let's go in reverse order. So start with Shannon.
I knew you were going to pick me first. So we have a fun name for our auction lot. We ended up calling it the Last Ole. And as I was mentioning to you guys, a lot of our relationships are long-term growing relationships that we've had. And so when we go into each vintage, we taste all of our barrels blind and we try to figure out what we like best. And we start coming up with single vineyard and blends. And in 2018, we were tasting and we just really had 2 blends that we loved for the Olenek vineyard. We started working with Olenek in 2009, and in 2018, he actually sold the vineyard to Cooper Mountain. So the Last Ole is the last year that it could be called Olenek vineyard, but it's not the last because we still are getting fruit from that source. For our Last Ole, one of the things that we're really about is not clobbering our wines with a lot of new oak. So for this actual blend that we made, which is a 5-case lot, it's got a 2-year and a 4-year aged barrel. So there's no new oak in it at all. It actually comes from a block that we've been working with since 2009, but also a block that we just started working with in 2018. So it's half Wadensville clone and half Pomard. It just so happened that this blend was all from our press lots. So it has a combination of whole cluster fruit in it up to about 20%. And we just really loved this wine. We thought it was a really fun combination.
Ole, ole, I like it.
Ole, ole.
Yes. So we're gonna keep moving backwards in the circle. So Michael, tell us about Benton-Lane's auction lot.
Yeah, so we struggled to come up with a name, but we figured that since it was the 30th anniversary, might as well go with that. It is only a 5-case lot. This one comes from it's 100% Wadensville, which on this site, we have years when it's great, we have years when it's not so good. It kind of goes back and forth. This year in particular was really nice. Everybody that tasted it's actually 2 separate lots. Everybody that tasted the 2 separate lots really liked both of them. I mean, it was just a hands down favorite out of everything, which is really interesting because that doesn't normally happen with the Wadensville, especially standalone. It's usually more of a blender for us here. But everybody really liked it, so I said, you know, we need to do this auction wine. Let's take some of this one. It's actually from 2 second-year filled barrels. So there is a little bit more oak on there, but I don't think it overpowers the fruit. There's still a really nice amount of fruit, really nice aromatics on this wine. I hadn't tasted it in, I don't know, a few months now, and opened it today and started kind of sharing it with my assistant winemaker and stuff. And we were shocked, pleasantly shocked, that it is really, really showing so nicely now. But yeah, it's from 2 separate sections of the Wadensville clone and one out of one particular block. And one of the sections is on the east side and one is on the west side. And then in the middle in between is a lot of different other clones, but yeah, just it worked out. So we'll run with it. So I think that's all I got for that.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing. Russell.
Sure. So the name of our lot is the Heartland, which comes from both our name, Gladhart, and also because the way we selected this wine, it really comes from the heart of our vineyard. So we're trying to bring you really the essence of what we do. You know, we follow a pretty traditional winemaking process. We're 100% estate grown. So we are monitoring each block. We hand pick everything. So really trying to get it at its peak of ripeness. We ferment in pretty small tanks and really, you know, give each lot a lot of TLC and try to get the best out of each section. But inevitably, you know, when you taste the wine, you'll find that some lots are better than others, or some barrels are better than others. And that's really kind of how we start our blending process is first we choose what are the best blocks of the vineyard in this year, which are the best wines. And then from there we say, well, which are the best barrels from those best lots? Then the next step is to say, okay, well, these are the best barrels, but which ones, when you put them together, make the best wines? Because that's not always the case that the 5 best barrels, when you put them together, make the best tasting wine. And so we go through that multi-layer process. That's how we make what we call our single block wines, which are kind of the bedrock of our wine club and the wines that we get kind of the most recognition for. So for this auction wine, we went one more step and we said, okay, these are our best single block wines. Let's choose from them and then blend those together to make this wine. And so we're really trying to get the very kind of best wine we have. And then here we focus that into sort of I think the essence or the heart of what we do. So I'm pretty happy with this wine. It's a 10-case lot, so you'll have even more wine to enjoy if you take this one home.
Nice. You know, when I saw the name, I wasn't sure if it was a typo, but now I totally get it. It's Heartland, but there's no E in it because it's after your last name. So thanks for making that connection. I get it now. So that's a fantastic story and super creative.
Right.
John, the man on a bucket in the vineyard who's like doesn't have a virtual background. It's the real deal. You're on mute though. So take yourself off mute and tell us about your auction lot.
Sorry, I just dropped my phone. I'm in the vineyard because my auction lot's all about the vineyard. We named it circa 1972 because that's when these vines were planted here at Olson Estate Vineyard, our estate vineyard, about 10 acres that Dr. Olson's owned since 1985. These vines are special. These cuttings came from the iris cuttings. It's kind of a Masal selection, so you know, mystery clones, suitcase clones, whatever you want to refer to them to. So these old vines are all some of the best material in our cellar. There's really no mistaking the goodness that the old vines give you up here, about 825 feet elevation in the Dundee Hills. So I go through all of these barrels. We pick out portions of barrels to make about a 30-gallon, fill a half a barrel, you know, so we can get get the oak just the way we want it. This particular wine is 40% new oak, which is a little much for Torii More style, but we wanted this wine to have some structure, that, you know, and kind of be a small departure from what we do. So this wine has quite a bit of a beautiful attack, if you say, from I think the 18 vintage, very bold, very strong. It was a warm summer. Classic high tone red fruit here, Dundee Hills character, beautiful spice notes. The oak is very integrated. This spent 22 months in the barrel, so it's all come together really nicely. I opened one of these this weekend to check on it, just to make sure it was perfect. And I opened one today, and I don't know if you can see the beautiful color, nice transparency, unfined, unfiltered. This wine's totally awesome. I mean, whoever comes home with this one's gonna be happy. I'm sure of it. It's a 5K lot. Our wines are also live certified. This wine would be live certified, so it's sustainable. Maybe, you know, with all sustainable practices. But like I said, we named it circa 1972 simply because, as an homage to the vineyard, as an homage to these old vines and these old cuttings that you know, from Winery and that David Lett brought over long ago when our industry started. So I wish everyone could taste it with me, but you'll just have to take my word for it, right?
It sounds amazing. And you know, you're in that unique spot where you've got some of those oldest vines in the valley, which is very cool. Have you done, I mean, do you know how many clones are part of the Missal selection, and how many, you know, do you have any idea?
You know, I've heard all kinds of guesses, all kinds of rumors. It's very hard to tell. Have we gone through and checked it all? No, we have not. We assume there's a lot of Pomard in here, you know, but it's just assumptions. We haven't done any genealogy or anything like that. But what I do know is the fruit is amazing. And we really, and we farm this ourselves. So we also, you know, there's very great care into the field. And we ferment these. We have 2 big 3-ton oak fermenters in the winery that we specifically set aside to use for these old vines. So great texture in this wine. This wine's soft, very integrated. It's all come together very nicely and very approachable young. I thought it would be like something that, you know, need a little more time, but you can enjoy this right now, no doubt.
So, you know, my favorite part of the Willamette Pinot auction, not only do I get to see people from all over the country, but I also love going around and tasting everybody's wines. And it's how I really get a great idea of what the vintage is like, is being able to taste through everyone's wine. So I'm grieving over the fact that I don't get to do that, but I appreciate you sharing these beautiful descriptors of your wines so that we get an idea of what we're missing out on, and hopefully some lucky bidders will end up with these wines. But let's talk a little bit more about the 2018 vintage. And you know, there's so much that goes into a vintage. Obviously, there's Mother Nature plays a huge role in it. And you know, is this the vintage of the decade? Is this the vintage of the century? How great? Everyone says it's a good vintage. How great of a vintage is it? I know that's hard to quantify. And then also, I want to encourage you all to add some color to it, because a vintage is more than just giving birth to these grapes and bringing them in. It's all the equipment breakdowns. It's all the, you know, late night runs to get pizza takeout or Martha's tacos or, you know, whatever it is. So there's more to a harvest than just making wine. Easier for me to say since, you know, I'm not a winemaker. But anyway, so talk about the 2018 vintage and share your stories, your thoughts.
I'll start. You know, there was a little bit of an early bloom here. It was a warm summer. I think we had 31 days over 90 without reaching 100. So warm, dry summer, great growing season. The smoke taint from all the fires around us didn't really affect us at all, which was really good because I was a little nervous about that. I liken this vintage to a lot of the wines I drank from 2005. Rich, bold, but also elegant at the same time. It's got that nice combination of, you know, strength and finesse. Also, there's a little bit of a transparency in each of the single vineyards that we do. We do a lot of different single vineyards where each vineyard is really singing its own song, very expressive. There, you know, a lot of those hot years, sometimes like really hot years, things can be a bit homogenized. I don't think this vintage is like that. I think this vintage has each has a lot of character and really, you know, well balanced wines. What do you guys think?
I'll go. You know, one of the things that we noticed when we were going to taste everything was that we were like reaching, we could get 20 glasses done in a day. And then we were like, okay, we need some cheese or something, because there just was so much tannin going on in the vintage. We actually haven't released any of our 2018s. We're just starting to release them right now. We think that additional year of aging will really help. But I also really think it's going to be one of those vintages that really, really hangs on for quite a while. These are going to sting for many, many years. All right, to give you some color, we all go into harvest and we have our harvest interns, and I know we're all probably panicking about harvest interns this year. Well, they make it across the border before everything gets closed down. But going into the 2018 vintage, one of my really good friends from California was like, I want to come up, I want to work a harvest, I'm so excited, I can't wait. And so he could only come for a month, so he was going to come in October. And I get literally a text message a week before, Shannon, I had a really bad accident on my motorcycle. Don't worry, I'm still coming up, but I can help you. And, you know, Ethan's a really great guy. I give him total kudos, but we had, my friend was here and he literally had been T-boned by a deer in his, on his wife's motorcycle. He was taking it around the block just because he knew he was going to be gone for a month. And he couldn't bend down. He got out of cleaning the press, which, you know, that's a great excuse. Hopefully none of my interns learn on that one this year, but he never had to climb under the press because he couldn't bend his knee, and for a while he couldn't lift one of his arms. But honestly, he was such a good good character for that.
The extent that somebody will go to just to get out of cleaning the press.
I like cleaning the press.
Oh, I've got
Michael Russell, you want to?
Yeah, I've got an unfortunate association with the 2018 vintage, and that's the smell of diesel fuel. We were just getting started with the vintage, and so in our winery we have the kind of basic electrical system that runs the lights and regular plugs. And then we have the three-phase system, which runs our, you know, winemaking equipment. And early on in the vintage, there was a, you know, burst of smoke in the electrical room, and the panel that runs all the three-phase equipment went out. And so we had to rent a generator and rewire half the winery to run all our equipment off of a generator. And as the winemaker, I was responsible for keeping that generator running because you get all the glamorous jobs when you're the winemaker. And so that meant keeping it fueled up. And so that the vintage, what sticks out to me is refilling that generator with diesel and constantly smelling like diesel fuel. My kids wouldn't let me in the door at the end of the day sometimes. So tasting the wine now, it tastes fantastic, but there's still that little bit of whenever I smell diesel, I remember 2018.
Wow. The making wine's not all fun and games, you know? There's the real stuff that happens too. Michael, any stories that you want to share from the 2018 vintage or thoughts on the goodness of the vintage?
Sure, I can do that. We can go along the equipment route. I had my press break down while I was pressing Chardonnay. And,
Black Chardonnay.
Yeah, I mean, granted, you know, we were pressing that before any other reds, but we were pressing it. We got as much as we could out of it. I mean, the press was added when the winery was built. The winery was built in '98. And so every year something happens to it, but this one in particular, I could not figure out for the life of me what was going on with the press. It just happened that one of the Scott Labs guys was coming up here to Oregon anyways, and so he was able to stop by the winery and actually figure out what was wrong. And it still required a part that had to get shipped to me. Took about 2 to 3 days to get it, but got it just in time for then the first red tank was ready to be pressed. So it was skin of your teeth, to say the least, on that one. Yeah.
Dude, I know all about the press problems. I pressed everything in 2018 by hand. My computer went out right in the beginning of the season. It had to come from France. There's no way it would have gotten here in time.
Oh, yeah.
So I ran every cycle by hand. I was like attached to the press. It was, I think I did a better job than the computer, but
I believe
it was, I couldn't leave the press. It was really tedious, I gotta say.
Oh,
Yeah.
And I had a wheel fall off my tractor when we were picking our Chardonnay here, and my neighbor Steve Whiteside at Bella Vita had to come over with his crawler and help us pull some bins out of the field. It's really stressful when you can't get bins out of the field.
Yeah.
So it's always something. There's
It's always something.
It's crazy, man.
Well, I still didn't get anybody to comment on, is this the vintage of the decade or the century? But it does sound like, despite all the challenges, this is a really darn good vintage. It's got amazing ageability, and yeah, it's going to be it's stunning. So with that, the next thing I wanted to ask you all about is the influence of the site, the soils, versus the influence of the winemaker. And, you know, we've got a couple of Bendy Hills properties, we've got Chehalem Mountains, we've got, you know, the southern part of the Willamette Valley. So some really diverse terroir that you're all working with, and would just love to get your thoughts on, you know, what plays a bigger role in the end result of the wine that you're producing. Is it your influence on the wine, or is it the terroir, the site where the grapes are grown? And again, kind of up for grabs. Anybody can jump in, but not at once. Not everybody at once.
All right,
That's a tough.
I'll
Go
jump
for
in.
it.
Oh, yeah, I'll stick my neck out. Yeah, so, you know, this place was originally a sheep farm. So we know, you know, it was a sheep farm for a good number of years. So we've got a lot of soil amendments that were added throughout that time, to say the least. It makes it extremely fertile. And not only that, but, you know, after the Missoula floods, the whole reason the Willamette Valley is the way the Willamette Valley is, and it's so fertile, everything, you know, just about everything can grow here. We're actually in the process of starting to really dissect our site. We're working on getting someone up here that is a soil scientist that is actually going to start digging pits, and we're going to really look into, you know, these different blocks and what's going on with the soils, as well as looking into some geology. So having someone come up and actually take a look at the rocks and take a look how, you know, our site was formed, and really start dissecting each individual part of our vineyard, so that we can have a nice story to talk about. Say, look, you know, this section of the vineyard is really great. We've got, you know, these soils here, these rocks here. I'm excited for it. I think that it's going to give us more just basic knowledge of our site. And then on the other end, you know, there are things that we have to do at the winery once we receive the fruit. So I think the two, between terroir and what the winemaker does, they have to go hand in hand. It can't be one over the other, I don't feel like. The other reason that the winemaker essentially needs to intervene is because we live in Oregon, and we end up with some interesting weather at the time of harvest. And that makes some choices that you got to make some choices. You know, there's some things you got to do to correct what Mother Nature gives you at that time. Anyway, that's my spiel.
I go with you on that.
I definitely.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'll say I definitely agree with what Michael just said. Like, it really has to go hand in hand. But the site that we chose for our auction lot, Linnick, it's been referred to as the ankle breaker. It's got rocks and it's in the slide area of the Chehalis Mountains. And definitely it's always one of the first blocks to come in. And I think a lot of that has to do with the heat that the rocks retain. But it is a balance because you don't want to overpower it and do so much on the winemaking side that you're taking away from what's going on in the vineyard. You're to make sure that you don't overshadow everything that Mother Nature, and you know, we got to give credit to our vineyard workers because they're the ones that are out there, they're pulling leaves, they're dropping fruit for us, and they're the ones that are really helping get that fruit from point A to point B.
Yeah, I agree. There has to be harmony in between, you know, with the winemaking and the growing. I will say, you know, you work with a certain site, like I've worked with this site for 14 years. I've come to know what to expect. You know, you work with the new vineyards. Sometimes you don't, and you don't hit the mark that time because it's something new for you. But I will say that if you start with something really, really special, the winemaker should make something really, really special, but can miss the mark as well. But, you know, you like to think that you don't. You make decisions. You look at the material you have to work with and you make your decisions right there on the spot, and you live with them and you stick by them. But I mean, in the Dundee Hills, we got this beautiful red soil here, you know, that you can't, we're so lucky to have, you know, the age of the vines, I think, plays a big role in, you know, the intellectual sort of value of the wine, how it changes, how it speaks to you. But you can't make great wine out of bad grapes. I mean, you can make something okay. So, I mean, I do think that the land and what you get and the vintage is probably, it definitely comes first. Then it's our job to look at it, evaluate it, not screw it up, and, you know, make the best thing we can with the material we have to work with. And I think in Oregon, especially in these last handful of vintages, I mean, we're spoiled. The weather's been pretty good. Again, in 18, I thought there was a good balance because it was a bigger crop. It could sort of off-play some of the heat, and you know, so it's harmony. You know, it all kind of has to go together in order to make something really, really, really special, which I think I'm sure we all did here in 2018.
I think
I lost my wine.
Never lose your mind. I think I would just like to add the side of consistency to the discussion, where I think we, you know, we're so excited about this vintage and the 2018 vintage, and so we try to really keep our winemaking pretty consistent from year to year because we want the vintage to really sing and to really express itself. And so, you know, we've learned every year, we learn in the winery and we learn new ideas and new techniques, but we try to introduce those new things very slowly so that we're not making any dramatic changes to the wine, because the first thing we want to really showcase is the vineyard and whatever kind of special character the vintage has. And then as winemakers, we want to support that, but not push either one out of the way. So I think consistency in our winemaking is a big part of what we try to bring to it.
Fantastic. So there was a question from Nancy that wondering, you know, 2018 sounds amazing. Yes, it was amazing. But how does that compare to 2016, 2017, and also the 2019 vintages? Does anybody want to tackle that?
I could tackle that. I was actually looking at some data that we had, just because we pick from so many different AVAs in the Willamette Valley. So I wanted to see like how many days the fruit hung between the different vintages. So for 2016, it was 15 days. So that was a really warm vintage. 2017, 23, 2018, 21, and then 14 days for 2019. So that kind of gives you an idea whether, you know, definitely affects our picking decisions and when we have to do some things. But having those warmer vintages definitely makes it a lot more compressed. 2018 was nice because we had enough time to just let it hang. We didn't have to flip tanks as quickly. It gave us a better opportunity. And I definitely think, especially with the tannins that we have from 2018, these are gonna last a long time.
Yeah, the fruit came in at a nice pace in 2018. It didn't, you weren't overwhelmed with all of it at once. You know, we wouldn't have any pressure from the weather, the wind, the birds, the sunburn, anything, dehydration. We didn't have any of that, those types of pressures, which is great. You know, 2016, a little ripe for my taste. I mean, Pinot Noir is a cool climate varietal. It wasn't cool. It was really warm and it was a smaller crop. You know, but the wines are fantastic. You know, beautiful, juicy, big wines. Maybe a little outside of what you would expect from Oregon. 2017, a little pared back, maybe somewhere in between what we have here in 18 and 16. But for my personal preference, I don't love the really hot vintages. I mean, we make good wine out of them, but you know, again, I think that some of the characters of each vineyard become a little homogenized with some of the dehydration and some of those characters that pop up in the wine. So when those years are hot like that, we tend to pick early, get it in, to avoid raisoning or, you know, anything that we would, you know, flavors imparted in the wine that, you know, the dehydrated character that we don't love here at Torii More. So yeah, picking decision, when to pick is big in all these seasons that are warm.
I always often think of those warmer vintages as the really consumer friendly when they're young. Like when you release them, like they're ready to go, they're excited to get into your glass, they're really easy to drink. Whereas those cooler vintages, those more classic Oregon vintages, they take a little bit more time to come around, and they're more the wines for aging. And those wines that if you have the patience, you will be rewarded with them. So, you know, there's always something for everybody.
19 might be like that, a little more classic Oregon, a little more, you know,
shyer.
Yeah.
A little bit more shy.
Yeah, a little leaner, a little more feminine. Now I'm looking at these grapes here, and 2020, it's going to be a small harvest. You know, crop levels are low, but everything's healthy. Time-wise, we're right on time. So you got a lot of small berries, small clusters. So we should make excellent wine, just not a lot of it. That's what my take on what we're going to see here in 2020, at least in the sites that I'm working with. What do you guys think?
So speaking of 2020, there was we can talk about the 2020 vintage, and then I'll share a question from the audience.
We're seeing a lot of the same thing in that we are having a lot of hens and chicks, so a lot of smaller berries. And then it's actually a lot looser clusters, which is actually really nice because it allows the sun to penetrate the grapes a little bit better, but also when we're making sure that we don't have any disease pressure, we're able to penetrate the middle of the grapes and do a lot better job at that. It's going to come into decisions for this year of how much whole cluster we want to do, because, you know, there's fewer berries on there, but there's a lot more rachis. But also with those smaller berries, they're going to have a lot more skin to juice ratio. So that'll change definitely the dynamics of how the wines come out.
Yeah, definitely.
Hey, Shannon, would you talk about hens and chicks, just in case folks aren't familiar with that, and maybe John even has some next to him that he could show?
He probably has some next to him. It's when, so we had this vintage when we were flowering, we had some rain that came through, and so not all of the berries sat the same way. So they'll be a lot smaller, and then the chicks are the little peas and the hens are the big fat ones. And so the fatter grapes are more like our normal size berry, and the chicks are the little guys that are going to have more concentrated flavor and more skin to juice ratio.
Yeah, you could sort of see it here. You get some big normal size berries, normal, and then inside you get these little shot berries, look like, you know, little BBs. And when they all grow up, I mean, you'll know the bigger ones will get bigger and the smaller will stay, you know, a little small. But like you could say, like she said, they're loose, which will really help with any sort of botrytis if we have any rain instance, you know, issues as we're about to pick. But I'm excited for this harvest. I think we'll be in it in about 5 weeks. 6 weeks.
The bets are beginning of what is the start date. So somebody was asking about labor shortages and if there's any concern for labor this year. And then I'll also tie into that, you know, mechanical harvesting. Is anybody playing around with that? What are your thoughts on it? You're going to start trying it out this year. Whoever wants to jump in.
We hand harvest everything. A machine would probably tear these posts apart. I haven't noticed any labor shortages yet, but you can sort of feel it when it's time, when you really want to pick one day and you can't get a crew. But has it really hit us yet? I don't think so. I mean, we work with guys, you know, that I have a vineyard crew here that whenever I need them, they're available, and I can take them and send them off to one of my other sites if I'm in a pinch. But is that an issue? Yes. Is it as big of an issue as sometimes it's made out to be? I don't think so. What do you guys think?
I would say we're pretty lucky. We got 3 interns, and that's what we typically get. I think the question is more of like, well, we have to work slower. We're going to have to space people out a little bit different.
Oh, yeah.
I think the biggest concern right now is not knowing, like, will the borders be closed? Will people have to quarantine for 14 days? If you originally set to come on a certain date and then they close the borders and you're like, crap, they can't come until 2 weeks after that date. That's where it becomes more of an issue. I have heard from other winemakers, they're not getting as many international interns, and actually I don't even know if international interns is even a thing anymore. It has been a little bit more challenging for other people, but I definitely know, you know, we're really resilient winemakers here in the Valley, and I really think everybody will pull together to help get it all done.
Michael, you seemed like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, sorry, I was getting text messages from my sister Winery asking me questions about what's going on down there. At least he didn't come up here, I guess that's a good thing. Yeah, so the biggest, we tend to be able to get enough people. As far as mechanical harvesting, I personally would rather not ever do that. We are set up for it now here in the newest planting, we're set up for it, but it just tears up the fruit and it tears up the vines, and the fruit you get, it tends to end up being mush. The only issues that we've seen so far is that other places, other crops pay better, and so we've lost a lot of pickers due to that. Last year, you know, the first 2 to 3 days of picking, we had 30 to 40 people. And then the next day, all of a sudden, we had 15. And we were going, well, what's going on here? Why is this happening? And it was because hemp was harvesting, and they were paying almost double what we were paying for them to run back and forth with buckets. And yeah, I mean, I don't blame them in all reality, but at the same time, you know, it put us in a little bit of a pickle. But, you know, after that was kind of said and done, we were able to move forward and start picking again. This year, hopefully, you know, I guess we'll see. You know, it's just something that's going to be a year-to-year battle where we have to figure out what we're going to do. We tend to need about 20 to 30 per day, so that is a lot of people.
Well, if any audience members have questions, other questions, feel free to add them to the Q&A. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep firing off questions to everybody. And so let's talk first about climate change and what you're seeing out there. We've talked about warmer vintages, cooler vintages, but think about it, you know, in terms of, you know, taking a step back over many vintages. Are you starting to notice trends and changes, and what are you doing to accommodate for that?
Cutting my summer vacation short. I feel like we're working in September every year now. Every year, you know, and sometimes, you know, first, second week in September, which back in the early, you know, 2000s, I mean, you know, it was, you would just assume October. You're going to start in October, the very beginning of October, but that's just not the way it is anymore. I mean, I've got my interns in around September 1st, setting the winery, getting things set, getting things clean, getting ready to receive. So I just feel there's just been about a 2-week pushback period, that I've noticed since 2012. Everything happens in early to mid-September.